Hello, with us today we have Julie Cluff. Hi, Julie.
Hi,
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
sure. So I'm a grief coach and I also do grief coach training. So I train other coaches in the work that I do and I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a grandma. And now I have grown children and my life has been scattered unfortunately with grief and loss experiences, which brought me to the work that I'm doing now.
So, could you tell me a little bit about your experience with loss and grief?
Absolutely. The first really big thing that happened that where I could say, "Oh, this is grief," was when my brother died by suicide, and I was in my 20s, and it was just horrific. It was just such a devastating experience, and, I was pretty unfamiliar with loss and grief, and like I tell people, we kind of ignore grief until we're in the middle of it, and then it's like we've been thrown into the middle of a deep, dark lake, and we've never been taught how to swim, and that's very much what it felt like, and so I muddled my way through that. Not long after my brother died, my first marriage ended in divorce, and I had 3 little kids, and so really rapidly, I was thrown into these experiences of loss and grief. What I muddled my way through those things and felt like I was, after some time had passed and doing some work and so forth, I felt like I was doing pretty good and actually felt like I was kind of coming out of this space where I just kept waiting for the next shoe to fall. I just kind of I had I was just expecting bad things to happen because I'd had this succession of bad things that
Right.
happened, and I had remarried and, we had 3 more kids, and I finally was in this space was where I was like, "Okay, I don't need to be sitting around just tense waiting for the next bad thing to happen. Good things are happening, and I can just expect good things." And then Mother's Day, 2007, I was driving my with my 3 youngest children, across we were going on a long road trip to go visit grandparents, and the middle of the afternoon, having never felt tired, I woke up and found myself behind the wheel of my SUV in the middle of the median, um, on the highway. And when I tried to pull my vehicle back up on the road, we started to roll and we rolled all the way across 2 lanes of highway. And unfortunately, my 2 youngest children, Carrie was 10 and David was 8. They were thrown from the car when the car rolled, and they died that day. And it was unlike any other grief experience that I had
Right.
had, and it was just devastating, as you can only imagine. Even now, when I tell this story, I'm just like, it's a lot. It's really, really, really a
Right.
lot, and it was tremendously difficult.
Right. So, what kinds of things have helped you and what hasn't helped you through the grief process?
You know, one of the things that helped me was the fact that I had experienced grief before, so I had some patience and compassion for myself. I even remember early on having just even this little bit of hope that somehow, I had no idea how, but I just had this little bit of hope that somehow I could rebuild my life again, that somehow life wouldn't be just devastating forever because of what had happened, and that was hard to imagine. It was hard to imagine because our whole world was torn apart.
Right.
Um, it changed everything. It absolutely changed everything, and it was a struggle to get out of bed in the morning. It was a struggle to concentrate on anything. It was a struggle not I mean, I just I was so hard on myself. I blamed myself. I blamed myself for the kids dying. I blamed myself for the pain that my whole family was going through. I blamed myself for all of it. And so it was intensely painful. Um, but one of the things that did not help was that after about a year and a half had gone by with some degree of patience with myself, and also a lot of, I was struggling with PTSD. I was struggling driving a car again. I was in um, having regular panic attacks that just looked like crying jags that just wouldn't subside. And but after about a year and a half of that, things got worse instead of better,
Mm.
because I lost patience with myself, and I started thinking I should be doing better than I am. And that thought created more pain, more anguish. It just heaped additional shame, additional guilt on top of my already extremely heavy grief. And I really started to sink into some um, pretty aggressive despair. Um, some of the things that helped me during that time was I I I did continue to try to re-engage with life, not
Mhm.
always successfully, but I continued to try. I had started playing tennis. I feel like this was a blessing from God that he sent me, was, this tennis team that I had joined just 3 months before the accident happened. And I was brand new to playing competitive tennis, and I was learning the game, and I went back to playing as soon as I was physically able, because I did sustain some injuries in the accident, nothing major. My wrist was fractured, and I had some um uh, my shoulders were sprained and severely sprained. So I had to go through physical healing process too. But I went back to playing tennis on that team, and it was such a blessing to me to be active and out there doing something that would, for moments at a time, take my mind off of the heavy pain that I was experiencing. So that was super helpful. I had friends that would reach out and say, "Hey, let's go do something," and I wasn't a lot of fun to be around, and that's okay.
Right.
But yeah, it was. So I continued to try. I continued to try, and I think I heard someone call it "try to try," and I just love that idea so much. And that's what I was doing. I was trying to try. I was continuing to try. I had this. I think we all have this spirit in us that wants to progress.
Right.
And I believe that's one of the things that's so hard about grief, is because it's an unwinding. It's a feeling of going backwards. It's a feeling of plummeting to this space that we don't want to be in, and that we really don't have any choice in. Grief is really part of the healing process. I didn't understand that at the time. I didn't understand why it was so hard. I had someone early on who was a mental health professional say, "We can choose to be happy." And I used that as a weapon against myself, because I kept
Mm.
thinking, I can't choose. I can't even choose to be
Right.
happy. I just couldn't choose into it. I couldn't
Right.
figure out how to choose it. So I thought there was something wrong with me. And there really wasn't anything wrong with me. I was just going through a grief process, and I find this with all my clients and everyone that I work with, that they they get feeling a little better to the point where they're like, I should be doing better.
Mhm.
And then they want to rush the healing process. They want to rush the grief, and they want to just get to the part where they feel better. And in that process, they start to feel bad about feeling bad instead of allowing the grief. So it's okay to be where we are and want something more. And it's being able to hold space for both of those ideas.
Yeah, continue to have compassion for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Compassion is huge.
Yeah. And what kind of stuff would you suggest if they're really like just stuck in the shame and the guilt? What is something that you can do to help you if you're right there in the shame and the guilt part of it?
Well, again, it goes back to self-compassion. And if we can recognize that grief isn't a problem, it's a problem, but it's not. It's again, it's part of the healing process. And our modern society does not look at it that way. Our modern society says there's something wrong with us if we grieve. We actually have some very misguided con ideas about grief. On the one hand, depending on what the loss experience is. So let me back up just a little bit. The first issue that we have is that we equate loss with grief and we equate love with grief. All three of those things are different things. So they are not the same. So you're not, so when we equate love and grief, we think that we have to grieve in order to prove our love. If we've lost something or someone that we loved, then we feel guilty if we have moments of happiness. We feel guilty if we have moments of laughter because we think that then we didn't love them enough to stay in the grief. We need to take those things apart and recognize that love is different than grief. And that, yes, the love that you have informs your grief because the greater the love, the greater the grief. But they're not intertwined in that when in time, if you let go of the pain of grief, it's not that you didn't love, it's that you continue to love. You're just letting go of the pain, not letting go of the grief, letting go of the pain. And also recognizing that loss and grief are separate. So we think that in order to stop grieving, the loss needs to have not happened. Well, the loss is still there, but we can again move through the pain, the grief of the experience. So we have these notions that depending on the loss, either we just need to get over it. I can't tell you how many people, and this is so shocking to me every time I hear it, but I can't tell you how many people lose someone close to them and they'll have someone say to them 3 months later, "You're still not over that?" And I just want to go, I want to scream, honestly.
Right.
Of course we're not over it yet. It took me years to move through the pain of the grief of losing my children. And I, wrote all about that in my book, Miracles in the Darkness, because I saw all these miracles that happened despite the pain, despite the loss,
Right.
despite the tragedy and the difficulty. There was so much that was still good about life, and there was so much to live for. So, first of all, we get this idea that we just need to get over it. And what that does is it says we start to think that we just need to hide the grief
Mhm.
because everyone expects us to be over it.
Right.
So we've got to hide it. That's not healthy. You know that
Right.
from the work that you do, that it's
Yes.
not healthy when we just take that and we, you know, put
Yeah.
it
It
inside
shows
and
up in
go,
different ways in your body.
exactly. It becomes like this little prison that we've created for ourselves internally. And then the other extreme is, and I still hear this. I still have people say to me, "Oh, you've lost two children. You will never get over the grief." And so we have that other extreme that we're never going to get over it,
Right.
which has not been my experience. Now, we never get over the person. It's not like we're leaving anybody behind. And there's this fear if we let go of the pain of the grief that somehow we're going to forget the person, we're going to let go of the love. I spoke to that a minute ago, right? A little bit.
Yes.
and it's not the case. And what I have found is that as we heal through the grief, as we heal, our love and our gratitude for the people that we've lost actually increases. It becomes more pure. It's less blocked by the grief. And if we had an hour, I could explain more about that, but we don't, and that's totally okay. But it's again this idea that we have to carry the grief forever
Right.
causes us to take that and create this prison within ourselves. It's like this locked box we can't open because it's too much. And that just it creates darkness. I literally could sense and feel darkness within myself as my grief, my guilt, and my shame grew and grew. And I was trying to force myself to act as if everything was okay. And it just about ate me alive
Right.
until I, had this miraculous experience of healing. And no matter what our healing journey looks like, it's a miraculous experience and it's available to anyone.
And how would you define healing?
When I look at healing, I look at being able to feel happy and not feel guilty about being happy. It's having that occasional sadness. So a lot of times we say grief when, like, at the time that we're doing this interview, um, yesterday was Mother's Day.
Right.
So, and Mother's Day is the anniversary of the accident, which my children died. It also happened to be my birthday weekend. It also, so it's all these things, right? And so you would think that that anniversary is really hard and heavy, but I, and it takes, and I never want to oversimplify this process. I never want to say, hey, this is what it could look like, and you can get there in a week. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying it was hard and heavy and difficult for months. I went through therapy for 2.5 years to get over my PTSD, to get over the heavy grief, the heavy guilt that I felt. And then I had this miraculous awakening where I just felt that darkness just being lifted from me. It was a beautiful experience. And again, it's going to look different for everyone. So I don't want to oversimplify, but healing looks like being able to move forward with our life and not carry that heaviness with us forever into the future. It looks like being able to tell our story and it's okay.
Right.
It's being able to move through the ups and downs of life and not feeling constantly triggered by our past experience. I always say triggers are just evidence that there's more healing to do.
Right.
And that's all it is. It's okay if you feel triggered right now. Just know that that's just a sign of a place where there's more healing to do.
Right, right. I agree. And they're also, when we get triggered, we think, oh, that's a bad thing, but really it shows us where something is, and then we get to to see how we're going to heal from that. So,
Absolutely, 100%.
and so what does your life look like now after you've gone through all of this healing?
Well, interestingly, I never expected to be a grief coach. It wasn't like I was, looking for this necessarily, but 5 years after the accident, I I had this chance encounter with this gentleman who was was basically acting as a coach to those who were dealing with the mental illness, and I was asked to tell my story, and I shared my experience of losing my children. And as we were leaving, he he touched my arm and he said, "You're supposed to do something with this." And it was like a lightning bolt went through my whole system. And I knew that he was right. And it took me years, literally years, to figure out what that was. And about 5 years later, I figured out, "Oh, it's coaching. That's where I'm supposed to be." And so I dove into learning about life coaching, learning about grief coaching, taking a lot of different trainings, and then eventually developing my own program to now I've got a 120 plus page workbook that I use with my clients to help them understand the principles that we've talked a little bit about today. We've touched on a little bit. I developed the Hope Model of Healing, and then the 5 foundations of grief, and the 5 foundations of growth, and now the Hope Grief certification, where I teach other coaches about grief and how to help their clients with grief. And so it looks really different than I expected my life to look like, and it's a beautiful gift to be in this space and to be able to offer hope. I feel like my whole mission is hope. That's the core of what I teach is hope. I was doing an interview with a therapist on his podcast. He was interviewing me for his podcast, and he says, I'm guessing when you were a kid, you weren't like, when I grow up, I'm going to be a grief coach."
Right.
Like, you're absolutely right. It never crossed my mind. But my life has uniquely qualified me to be in this space. And I have watched some miraculous people, just beautiful, beautiful people that have come to the training and have also picked up on this mission to offer hope to people, hope for healing, hope for life after loss.
Wow. Wow. And what kind of things do you offer that people could maybe start out with, if they reach out to you and aren't ready for like coaching? Is there things that you have available that they could kind of look at, see what you have?
Yeah. So on my website, there's a um, basically it's like a small ebook that they can download about three ways to get started, 3 tools to help start the process of healing. I also have an email course. It's a self-paced course that's again, hope and healing, and yeah. And then I was going to share with your audience, if you go to buildalifeafterloss.com/gift, there's a free course there that
Mhm.
it's actually called The Problem with Grief and What to Do About It.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I share the Hope Model of Healing and some other tools and some other explanations. And it's like with anything, when we understand more about what we're experiencing, we are so much more able to cope with what's happening.
Right.
And when we find ourselves in grief from these just hard situations, like I if you're in the middle of that right now, my heart goes out to you. It's painful, it's confusing. We're just in this space of confusion and overwhelm as our brain and our body is trying to adjust to this major um, loss or major change that's happened in our life. And it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes correct principles and the grace of God for us to move through that and to find that healing. But it is available to us, and always takes longer than we think it should. So if you're, you're 3 years out there, you're going, "What's wrong with me?" You're okay. It's okay to be right where you are, and it's also okay to want something better. And so it's also okay to put in the effort to find those things that are gonna help you, to, invest in programs that are gonna help you to move through and that's one of the things I'm so, so grateful for, is that I never gave up. I never gave up on myself. I never gave up on the idea that healing could be possible for me. And I think that was a tremendous blessing, and I'm so grateful for that piece of me that understood that there was still hope even in the darkness.
It's beautiful. What's one thing somebody could do today just to support them on that healing journey?
One thing that, I didn't discover until, and this is actually in the download I was talking about earlier too, but one thing I didn't really um, connect to or understand is so super simple. It's like, why did it take me so many years to learn about this? But breath work is so powerful. And even if you just put your hand on your heart for 15 seconds, close your eyes and go internally and just breathe. Just focus on your breathing and breathe deeply. Breathe so deeply that you feel your stomach going up and down, not just your chest, because that's that tight breathing
Right.
where and we spend most of our time here, within our shoulders and
In that
and and breathing from our chest. But just taking 15 seconds to just slow everything down when you feel that overwhelm, you feel that confusion, you feel that frustration, slow everything down. Putting your hand on your heart creates this energetic warmth and compassion, and it's so supportive. And then taking those deep breaths signals our body to release and just again slow everything down and relax. If you can take more than 15 seconds, great. Take 5 minutes, but even just a few seconds. I have used this in so many times and in so many ways. You get a phone call that's hard and you get off the phone and you're spinning out. It's like, okay, just take a few breaths, and it will calm everything down a little bit so that you can think a little clearer and you can start to feel a little better. But it's really, really simple. So don't overlook doing this because it seems so simple.
right. And
It
it
really
does
is
make a
powerful.
huge impact. It really does. I do similar
Hmm.
things.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And anybody, the link that's included with her page is the link to this amazing free class that she's offered to all of you. And you have such a beautiful heart and message. I love that you're really reaching out and that your your heart has expanded with everything you've been through and that you're wrapping your arms around others with it. That's beautiful. Is there anything
Thank
else
you,
you want to
Carla.
share with us?
Well, just to what you just said, there's a piece in my workbook where I talk about your soul expanded. Your your if you're experiencing a loss right now, it just feels so crushing and it feels so devastating, and it feels like, and it may even feel like right at this very moment, like you can't come back from this and that it's just going to be hard forever. But all of those pieces where it feels like everything is damaged and difficult, those are all the pieces. Like, think of it as springtime. In the winter everything dies off and it just looks like it's never going to come back. It's just always going to be the broken branches and the dried landscape and the nothingness of winter where just everything kind of dies off. But as you move through this really challenging period of winter, know that spring is coming. And in all those places where it has felt dark and difficult and challenging, and those are all the places where your soul is expanding. It's preparing for regrowth, and it's preparing for this expansion of your being and of who you are, and your expansion of your understanding of spiritual things and emotional things. And yeah, it's it's a challenging journey, but it's worth it.
Right, right. And when you get on the other side and you get to see the expansion, it really is, from my experience, it really is beautiful getting to love and celebrate in a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It has been such a blessing to have you here today, and we're all lucky just to get to hear the different things that you teach, you experience, and I love that you shared this whole class with us so that we can, and what your content is. Um, and what is the name of your website in case anybody wants to reach out to work with you?
It's buildalifeafterloss.com.
Okay. Okay. So everybody, if I mean, like Julie said, she has different content out there. You can reach out if you are ready to work with somebody to help you through this process. And and she's not just coming from learning from books, she's coming from her heart. So we're very blessed. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Carla.